The clock on Isabella Martinez's nightstand read 11:47 p.m. when she finally broke. 16 years of trying to be strong, of holding her family together while it crumbled around her, came crashing down in a flood of tears that soaked her pillow. In the dim glow of her desk lamp, she turned toward the small Virgin Mary statue that had sat gathering dust on her shelf for months, a final gift from her grandmother, who had died believing in miracles that Isabella was no longer sure existed. "Please," she whispered to the ceramic figure, her voice barely audible in the suffocating silence of her bedroom. "If you're real, if you can hear me, I can't do this anymore. My family is falling apart, and I don't know how to fix it." Her words came in broken sobs, a desperate prayer from a girl who had lost faith in everything except her own pain. The house around her echoed with the aftermath of another vicious fight between her parents. Doors slamming, accusations hurled like weapons, her 10-year-old brother Miguel crying himself to sleep in the next room. Isabella had become the unofficial mediator, the one who tried to shield Miguel from the worst of it. But tonight, she had nothing left to give. She was drowning in responsibilities that no teenager should carry, watching helplessly as her mother worked 3 jobs to pay for lawyers, and her father spiraled deeper into the bottle that had become his only companion. Before we go deeper into this mystery, take a moment to subscribe to Virgin Mary Mysteries. Stories like this are too powerful to experience alone. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from tonight, and share a simple prayer for families in crisis. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. According to Isabella herself, what happened next would change everything she thought she knew about prayer. She knelt beside her bed, clutching the statue with trembling hands, and spoke from a place of absolute desperation. "If you can help us, please show me somehow. Give me a sign that we're not completely alone in this." The ceramic felt warm against her palms, or perhaps that was just her tears. She placed the statue carefully back on the shelf, its gentle face catching the lamplight in a way that seemed almost alive. Sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams she could barely remember. Images of light and whispered words in a language that felt familiar, yet foreign. Isabella woke to her alarm with swollen eyes and a heavy heart, dreading another day of navigating her family's battlefield. She dressed mechanically, grabbed her backpack and headed for the door, expecting nothing more than another exhausting day of pretending everything was fine. But as she reached for her car keys, something extraordinary happened that would make her question everything about that desperate midnight conversation. The phone call came at exactly 7:15 a.m., just as Isabella's hand touched the front door handle. What message would change the trajectory of her entire family's story, and who could have possibly known to call at that precise moment? The phone call that morning came from Isabella's school counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez, with news that Isabella's scholarship application, the one she'd submitted months ago and forgotten about in the chaos of her family's disintegration, had been approved. It was a full ride to the state university, enough to change her entire future. But as she hung up the phone, Isabella felt more confused than relieved. She had submitted that application on a whim, never expecting anything to come of it, and certainly not expecting it to be approved on the very morning after her desperate midnight prayer. To understand why this moment felt so extraordinary to Isabella, you have to know how far her faith had fallen. Just 2 years earlier, she had been the kind of girl who never missed Sunday Mass, who genuinely believed that prayer could move mountains. That was before her world began to crumble, piece by piece, in ways that no amount of prayer seemed able to stop. The Virgin Mary statue that now sat on her shelf had belonged to her grandmother, Elena Martinez, a woman whose faith was as unshakable as the mountains of her native Mexico. Abuela Elena had raised 7 children through poverty, war, and heartbreak, never once losing her conviction that the Virgin Mother watched over every family with tender care. When cancer finally claimed her at 84, she pressed the small ceramic statue into Isabella's 15-year-old hands with words that still echoed in her memory. "Mija, when you feel most alone, remember that she always listens. Always." But how could Isabella believe that now? When her father's drinking had cost him 3 jobs in 18 months, when her mother's tears had become as constant as the rain outside, when little Miguel had started wetting the bed again because he was so afraid of the shouting. Where was the divine protection when her parents filed for divorce, splitting their modest savings between 2 sets of lawyers who seemed more interested in prolonging the battle than ending it? Isabella had stopped praying sometime around her 16th birthday when she realized she was spending more time mediating her parents' fights than studying for her SATs. The statue had become a painful reminder of promises that felt empty, sitting silent on her shelf while her family fell apart around her. She had even considered putting it away in a drawer, but something, perhaps the memory of her grandmother's gentle smile, had stopped her. Now, staring at the acceptance letter in her hands, Isabella found herself remembering her grandmother's other stories, the ones she used to dismiss as old-fashioned superstition. Tales of impossible coincidences, of prayers answered in ways that defied explanation, of a maternal presence that moved through the world with subtle grace, orchestrating events that looked like luck but felt like love. The scholarship would solve so many problems. Her mother could stop working the night shift at the diner, her parents might have one less thing to fight about, and Isabella could finally see a path forward for herself. But the timing felt too perfect, too precisely aligned with her moment of absolute desperation. As she folded the letter carefully and placed it on the kitchen counter where her mother would find it, Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that her midnight conversation had been heard by someone far more powerful than she had dared to hope. But if that phone call was truly an answer to prayer, what did that mean about the other impossible things that were about to unfold? The accident that almost claimed Isabella's life happened on Tuesday morning, exactly 4 days after the scholarship call. She was driving to school along her usual route, mind preoccupied with growing tensions at home despite the good news about her future. Isabella approached the intersection of Maple and 5th Street at exactly 7:32 a.m., the traffic light showing green just as it had every morning for 2 years. But as she pressed the accelerator, something inexplicable happened. A sudden, overwhelming urge to stop flooded through her. Not a conscious thought, but an instinct so powerful it felt like a physical force. Her foot slammed on the brakes without any logical reason, bringing her car to a jarring halt just as the light turned yellow. 3 seconds later, a massive delivery truck ran the red light at full speed, barreling through the exact spot where Isabella's car would have been. The driver had fallen asleep at the wheel after working a double shift. The sound of squealing tires and honking horns filled the air as other drivers swerved to avoid the runaway truck, which crashed into a utility pole 50 yards down the street. Isabella sat frozen, hands trembling on the steering wheel. The other drivers who witnessed the near miss kept asking her the same question. How did you know to stop? But Isabella couldn't answer them, because she didn't know. The compulsion to brake had come from somewhere beyond rational thought. If this story is pulling you in, subscribe now and tell me in the comments what you believe is really happening. Your insight might reveal something we haven't seen yet. That evening, Isabella found herself standing before the Virgin Mary statue on her shelf. The ceramic figure seemed different somehow, its painted eyes holding a depth she hadn't noticed before. "Was that you?" she whispered, feeling foolish but unable to ignore the timing. 2 miraculous interventions in less than a week felt like more than coincidence, but any sense of divine protection shattered that same night when her parents' argument escalated beyond anything before. Her father, drunk again despite his promises, threw a glass against the kitchen wall with such force that shards scattered across the floor like fallen stars. Her mother's sobs echoed through the house. Miguel ran to Isabella's room, trembling with fear. "Why are they getting worse?" he asked through tears. "I thought things were getting better because of your college money." Isabella held her brother close, unable to find words of comfort. The protection she'd felt that morning suddenly felt fragile, uncertain. If divine intervention was real, why were the most important battles still being lost? Why could her life be saved from a truck, but her family couldn't be saved from itself? As she tucked Miguel into bed and whispered a prayer she barely believed, Isabella had no way of knowing that the answer was already on its way, hidden in the most unexpected place imaginable. But who could have predicted that the next sign would arrive through the one person who seemed to understand her pain better than anyone else? And how would she react when she discovered who was really behind it? The note appeared in Isabella's locker on Friday morning, tucked between her chemistry textbook and Spanish folder like it had always belonged there. She almost missed it entirely, just a small piece of cream-colored paper folded once, with her name written in elegant cursive across the front. Isabella glanced around the bustling hallway, wondering who could have accessed her locker without the combination. But the morning rush of students provided no answers. She unfolded the paper with curious fingers, and what she read made her breath catch in her throat. The message was brief but devastating in its precision. Querida Isabella, the strongest hearts are forged in the deepest pain. Your family's healing has already begun, but you must trust the process even when you cannot see the path. The love you seek to give them starts with loving yourself. You are not alone. M. The words hit her like a physical blow, not because they were harsh, but because they addressed the exact struggle she had been wrestling with since her midnight prayer. How could a stranger know about the guilt she carried, the way she blamed herself for not being able to fix her family's problems? How could someone understand the specific loneliness she felt, even when surrounded by people who loved her? But it was the signature that made her hands begin to tremble. M. The same initial her grandmother had always used when signing cards and letters, claiming it stood for both Maria and Madre, connecting her earthly identity with the heavenly mother she served so devotedly. Abuela Elena had believed that the Virgin Mary worked through ordinary people, guiding them to be instruments of her grace in small, everyday moments. Isabella's rational mind immediately began searching for logical explanations. Perhaps one of her teachers had noticed her struggles and wanted to offer anonymous encouragement. Maybe a classmate had overheard her phone conversation with her mother about the family situation. But as she read the note again, the intimate knowledge of her inner turmoil felt too specific, too perfectly timed to be mere coincidence. Determined to solve the mystery, Isabella went straight to the main office during her lunch break. "I need to see the security footage from this morning," she told Mrs. Chen, the administrative assistant. "Someone left something in my locker, and I want to know who it was." Mrs. Chen, who had known Isabella since freshman year, agreed to review the hallway cameras from the time period before school started. What they discovered defied every logical explanation Isabella could imagine. The footage showed her arriving at her locker at 7:45 a.m., exactly as she remembered. But rewinding to earlier that morning revealed something impossible. No one had approached her locker. The hallway had been empty from the time the janitor finished cleaning at 6:30 a.m. until Isabella herself arrived over an hour later. "That's strange," Mrs. Chen murmured, checking the timestamp repeatedly. "Are you sure the note wasn't already there from yesterday?" But Isabella was certain. She had grabbed books from that same spot Thursday afternoon, and the locker had been empty except for her usual supplies. Standing in the administrative office, clutching the mysterious note, Isabella felt the ground beneath her certainty beginning to shift once again. If no human hand had placed this message in her locker, then what force was orchestrating these impossible interventions? And more importantly, what was this presence trying to prepare her for? The job offer that would change everything came to Isabella's mother through a chain of events so perfectly orchestrated that even the most skeptical observer would have questioned whether mere chance could be responsible. It began on the Monday after Isabella found the mysterious note, when Carmen Martinez's manager at the diner mentioned that his sister worked for the city's planning department. What seemed like casual conversation became something much more significant when the manager revealed that the department was desperately seeking someone with Carmen's exact combination of skills: bilingual customer service experience and night availability. Carmen had worked customer service for a telecommunications company before Isabella's father's drinking problem forced her to take whatever jobs she could find to keep the family afloat. The planning department position offered not only better pay, but also health insurance and regular daytime hours that would allow her to be present for her children's lives again. It seemed too good to be true, which is exactly what Carmen told Isabella when she received the call that Tuesday afternoon. "Mija, they want to interview me tomorrow," Carmen said, her voice trembling between hope and disbelief. "But I haven't applied anywhere. I don't even know how they got my name." The explanation came when Carmen arrived for the interview and discovered that her former supervisor from the telecommunications company had recommended her, a woman she hadn't spoken to in over 2 years, who had somehow learned about the opening through her neighbor, who happened to be married to the planning department supervisor. The series of connections was so intricate, so precisely timed, that Isabella found herself thinking of her grandmother's favorite saying, "God's hand moves through human hearts, but only those paying attention can see the pattern." Carmen got the job, starting the following Monday with a salary that would eliminate the need for her exhausting night shifts and provide the stability their family had been desperate for. For the first time in months, Isabella saw genuine hope return to her mother's eyes. Carmen even suggested they celebrate with a family dinner, something that hadn't happened since before the divorce proceedings began. Isabella's father, Roberto, seemed cautiously optimistic about the change, mentioning that perhaps Carmen's new schedule would give them opportunities to co-parent more effectively. The dinner was planned for Friday evening, and Isabella allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, their prayers were finally being answered. The scholarship, the accident she'd avoided, the mysterious note, and now her mother's unexpected job offer. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. Even her father had been sober for 3 consecutive days, the longest stretch in months. But on Thursday night, just hours before their planned celebration, Isabella discovered something that threatened to destroy not only the fragile peace they'd built, but her faith in everything she'd begun to believe about divine intervention. Hidden in her father's jacket pocket, she found documents that revealed a secret so devastating it would test every ounce of hope she'd managed to rebuild. What Roberto Martinez had been hiding would shake Isabella's trust to its very foundation and force her to question whether the miracles she'd witnessed were real or simply cruel coincidences leading to an even greater heartbreak. The documents that Isabella discovered in her father's jacket pocket weren't what she expected. They were attendance sheets from Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, dated over the past 6 weeks, along with a handwritten letter addressed to the family that Roberto had apparently been too ashamed to deliver. Her hands trembled as she read his words. "I know I've failed you all, and I don't expect forgiveness. But I want you to know I'm trying to become the father and husband you deserve. I've been sober for 72 days, attending meetings every night when you thought I was drinking. I was too scared to tell you in case I failed again." Isabella sank onto her parents' bed, overwhelmed by the realization that while she had been praying for miracles, her father had been fighting his own private battle for redemption. The timing wasn't coincidental. His first meeting was dated just 2 days after her desperate midnight prayer. But before she could fully process this revelation, Miguel's terrified screams from the backyard shattered the evening silence. She ran outside to find her 10-year-old brother trapped under the heavy wooden play structure that their father had built years earlier. The old structure had finally collapsed, pinning Miguel beneath a crossbeam that was slowly crushing his chest. Carmen was already there, frantically trying to lift the beam, but it was far too heavy for one person to move. Isabella rushed to help, but even together they couldn't budge the massive timber. "I can't breathe," Miguel gasped, his face turning pale as the weight pressed down on his ribcage. They needed help immediately, but their neighbors weren't home, and calling emergency services would take precious minutes they didn't have. Just as panic began to overwhelm Isabella, she heard the sound of running footsteps. Roberto burst through the back gate, still wearing his work clothes, having arrived home early to prepare for their family dinner. Without hesitation, he positioned himself beside the beam and, with strength that seemed to defy human limitation, lifted the massive piece of wood high enough for Carmen and Isabella to pull Miguel to safety. Later, the three of them together couldn't even shift the beam an inch, making Roberto's solo rescue seem impossible. Miguel was bruised, but miraculously uninjured. The beam had caught on a small metal pipe protruding from the ground, creating just enough space to protect his vital organs. As they held their son, checking him for injuries, Roberto and Carmen looked at each other with an understanding that transcended their months of bitter conflict. Their child was safe, and in that moment of shared gratitude, the wall between them began to crumble. That night, Roberto finally shared his AA letter with the family, and Carmen revealed that she had been attending Al-Anon meetings for weeks, learning how to heal from the damage addiction had caused their marriage. They talked until dawn, sharing fears and hopes they had buried beneath years of anger and disappointment. Isabella watched her parents rediscover each other, but she couldn't shake the feeling that these miraculous interventions were building towards something much larger than her family's healing. What final test was waiting? And would her faith be strong enough to guide her through whatever came next? The choice that would define Isabella's entire future came 3 weeks later, disguised as an opportunity that should have brought pure joy. The university called with news that her scholarship had been upgraded to include a summer research program, a prestigious opportunity that would guarantee her acceptance into graduate school and set her on a path toward the medical career she had always dreamed of. But there was one condition. She had to start immediately, which meant leaving for campus within the week. The timing couldn't have been worse. Her parents' reconciliation was still fragile, requiring careful navigation of old wounds and new promises. Carmen had just started her new job and was struggling with the learning curve, working late most evenings to prove herself. Roberto was approaching his 90-day sobriety milestone, but admitted to Isabella that he was terrified of facing the house alone during the day while she was at school and Carmen was at work. Miguel, still shaken from his accident, had developed separation anxiety and clung to Isabella whenever she tried to leave. "You have to take this opportunity," her mother insisted, though Isabella could see the fear in her eyes. "This is what we've all been working toward. You can't sacrifice your future for us." But Roberto was more honest about his concerns. "I'm not strong enough yet to carry this family without you. I need more time." The admission broke Isabella's heart because she knew he was telling the truth. Standing in her bedroom that night, holding the university's acceptance letter, Isabella felt the weight of an impossible decision. Taking the scholarship meant abandoning her family at their most vulnerable moment, potentially triggering a relapse that could destroy all the progress they had made. But refusing meant giving up everything she had worked for, including the chance to become the doctor she had dreamed of being since childhood. For the second time in her life, Isabella found herself kneeling before the Virgin Mary statue, tears streaming down her face as she poured out her heart in desperate prayer. "I don't know what to do," she whispered to the ceramic figure. "You've brought us this far. You've given us so many signs. But now I'm being asked to choose between everything I want and everyone I love. Please show me the path." As she spoke, something extraordinary happened that would forever change her understanding of how prayers are answered. The statue began to glow, not with supernatural light, but with something far more profound, the warm radiance of absolute clarity flooding through Isabella's mind. In that moment of perfect understanding, Isabella knew exactly what she was meant to do, and why every miraculous intervention had been leading to this precise choice. But what she discovered about her true calling would challenge everything she thought she knew about sacrifice, purpose, and the mysterious ways that divine love guides us toward our destiny. The clarity that came to Isabella that night wasn't about choosing between her dreams and her family. It was about discovering that she had been asking the wrong question entirely. As she knelt before the Virgin Mary statue, the answer that flooded her heart was so simple and so perfect that she couldn't believe she had missed it. Her true calling wasn't to become a doctor in some distant hospital, but to bring healing directly to families like her own, right here in her community. Isabella called the university the next morning and negotiated a one-year deferral of her scholarship with the condition that she spend that time in service work related to her field of study. What began as a compromise became the foundation of something extraordinary. She started by volunteering at the local community center, helping other families navigate addiction recovery resources. But within months, her informal counseling sessions had grown into something much larger. The Martinez family home became a sanctuary for other broken families seeking hope. Roberto, now 6 months sober, began leading addiction support groups in their living room. Carmen used her new financial stability to provide meals for families in crisis. Miguel, no longer anxious and withdrawn, became a big brother figure to younger children whose parents were fighting their own battles with addiction and divorce. But the miracles didn't stop with Isabella's family. They seemed to spread throughout their community in ways that defied explanation. Families who attended Roberto's support groups reported unexpected job opportunities and reconciliations. Children who played with Miguel began performing better in school. Carmen's co-workers started commenting on the unusual peace they felt when visiting the Martinez home. The Virgin Mary statue now sits in the center of their dining room table, where it can oversee the weekly gatherings that have become a cornerstone of healing for dozens of families. Isabella often catches people quietly touching the ceramic figure or whispering prayers when they think no one is looking. She never mentions the role the statue played in her own transformation. She doesn't need to. The presence speaks for itself. A year later, Isabella did return to university, but with a new major in family counseling and a clear vision for her future. She plans to open a community center that combines practical support with spiritual guidance, creating a place where broken families can find both resources and hope. Her midnight prayer hadn't just saved her family, it had shown her the path to saving many others. The scholarship that had seemed so important was replaced by something far more valuable, a calling that felt perfectly aligned with divine purpose. Isabella now understands that the Virgin Mary's interventions weren't separate miracles, but part of a single, beautiful plan to transform pain into purpose, brokenness into blessing. If this story moved you, subscribe to Virgin Mary Mysteries so you never miss the next chapter in these extraordinary mysteries. In the comments, share your own prayer of gratitude by typing "Sacred Hearts, Healed Homes," so we can create a chain of blessing for all families in need of hope. Yet even now, months later, Isabella still doesn't fully understand how that first desperate prayer set everything in motion. The mystery of divine love working through ordinary moments remains beautifully unsolved, and perhaps that's exactly as it should be.